Hello everyone. I'll illustrate today how to deduce the debit and credit rules from the accounting equation. So I'll start by the accounting equation, and you recall that assets equals liabilities plus shareholders' equity plus revenue minus expenses minus dividends. And as you recall also that dividends is the distribution of profit to the owners. So assets, let's say that a shareholder or an owner invested in the business and took common shares. So in this case, we have cash. Let's say they invested 10,000. So 10,000 in cash, and common shares here would increase by 10,000 because that is an increase in cash. So the business owns more cash, so that's an asset. And shareholders' equity represented in common shares increases as well because that's what the business owes to the owner. Now, let's say that we bought, the business bought equipment for, let's say, 7,000. So an equipment increases by 7,000, but we didn't pay it in cash totally. So we paid only 4,000 in cash and the rest on account. So the cash decreased by 4,000 and the rest on account mean that we're going to pay it later to the owner of the equipment, which we call in this case a liability, because that's accounts payable, which is a liability because this is not an owner. So we owe him or her 3,000. So if you look at this side, you'll find that 7,000 minus 4,000, which is 3,000 increase. On the other side, there's another equivalent increase of 3,000, so it is balancing. Now, if you drew a line like that, and we have balances, so here we'll have 6,000, and then 7,000. On this side, we'll have 3,000, and then plus 10,000, which is still 13,000. So both sides are equal. Now, let's say that we made some services to a client. So we rendered service to a client, let's say for 5,000. The client paid 4,000 and the rest is going to be paid later. So our assets increased by 4,000 to return back to 10,000 plus 7,000. Just wait a minute here. I'm going to return back to this side. 3,000 is as it is. 10,000 is as it is. Now, revenue increased by 5,000. So here we have 5,000. But on this side, we have increased only 4,000. So, but this guy owes us money. So we call this, we're going to receive money in the future. So this represents accounts receivable, which is still an asset because we own the right to get this money. So now we have 5,000 on this side, and there is another 5,000 on the other side. So it's still balancing. Let's say that we paid salaries for 2,000. So what happens is the cash is going to decrease by 2,000, and now under the expenses here, we'll have 2,000. But it's going to be minus, right? So 2,000 decrease on that side and 2,000 decrease also on this side. So the problem here which we're facing is that you see on the cash part here, you find that this column we have addition, subtraction, addition, then subtraction, and getting the balance each time, and then we're going to get for sure wrong because these are very neat numbers, but in real life you'll find that these numbers aren't that neat. They would be with cents, they would be with fraction, with very complicated numbers. They're not going to be like 10,000, 6,000. So in this case, as a way around that, to make it easier for us and to reduce the risk of getting mixed up by the pluses and minus, so we said, okay, we would split actually the minus on one side and the plus on the other side. So if we have here 10,000, so we'll take the 10,000 on this side, let's say, and then 4,000 minus, so we'll put the 4,000 here. Then what did we do? We have 4,000 in addition here, so 4,000 goes there, and then 2,000 here, which is negative, so we put it with the negative. So at the end we have here 14,000, and on this side we have 6,000. So we subtract it one time by saying, okay, 14,000 minus 6,000, which is equal to 8,000, which actually 10,000 minus 2,000 is 8,000, right? So we added all the positive, all the negative, subtracted one time so that we don't get mixed up. So this is also happening in any of these accounts or any of these accounts here. You can separate them into plus and minus. So basically what we have done here is that we have the cash, and we had on this side the 10,000, the 4,000. On the other side we had the 4,000 and the 2,000. So at this point we'll say, okay, so we'll separate them like that. So we said, and we could make just another line like that to separate the title from the numbers. And if you see, that's a big T. That's why this is called a T account. And instead of saying this side and that side, so we call this side the debit and we call this side the credit. So the left hand side is the debit and the right hand side is the credit. So how would we know? So in the cash, which is an asset, the positive side was here and the negative side is there. But is it always like that? We'll have to see and relate that to the accounting equation. I'll return back to the accounting equation where assets equals liabilities plus shareholders' equity plus revenues minus expenses minus dividends. So now you have here, you see those expenses and dividends, they are negative. How could you transfer them to the positive side? You're going to move them here. And then they're going to be positive. They're going to change sign. So you can say that, let it make it like that. It's D, E, and A, so that you can say D. So the D will be equal to L plus SE plus R. So now we can say that all this category, or this category which has the D, which is dividends, expenses, and assets, are on the left-hand side of the equation, and the liabilities and shareholders' equity and revenue are on the right-hand side of the equation. So we call the left-hand side in accounting the debit side, and the right-hand side, we call it the credit side. So if we have an account now, like cash, which is an asset, it increases. So we say that anything which increases, it increases on its main side or its nature. So the assets are debit. So in order to increase an asset, we're just going to put it in the debit side. If assets decreases, so we'll take them to the other side, which is the credit side. So here we have credit. The same thing applies to the liabilities. So in the liabilities, we'll have also, if they increases on the same side, which is credit, and decreases in the opposite side, so we'll take them to the other side of the equation, which is debit. So finally, you'll see that any of these categories or these accounts, whether dividends, expense account, or an asset account, it increases by being debit, decreases by being credit, while any liabilities, shareholders' equity account, or revenue, they would increase by being credit and decrease by being debit. So if you look at an account, a T account on this side, so any of those, whether it is dividends, expenses, or assets, the increase would be here, negative will be there. And it is always and ever that debit is on the left-hand side and credit is the right-hand side. And if any of these accounts, whether the liabilities, the shareholders' equity, or the revenue, the increase will be in the credit side and the decrease will be in the debit side. Hope that helps.